in. Why don't we just take a minute to go around and introduce everyone so we can know who we all are. I think most of us know who we are anyway, but in case we don't. Marty Walsh.
Tim Davis, Housing Policy Manager, BPDA.
Brian Golden, Director of the BPDA.
I'm Catherine Carlock with the Boston Business Journal.
Steve Adams, Banker Facebook.
Betsy Faison, the Boston Sun and Beacon Hill Times.
Beth Healy, Boston Globe.
Tim Logan with the Globe.
Sheila Dillon, Department of Neighborhood Development. Christine O'Keefe, Senior Development Officer at the Department of Neighborhood Development.
Sasha Pfeiffer from the Globe.
Bonnie Miller, BPDA Communications. Nicole Miller, Press Secretary. Mayor's Office.
Jonathan Greeley, Director of Development at the BPDA.
Peter Sasso, Director of Compliance to the BPDA.
Susan Kay, Communications Intern at the BPDA.
Gina Physics, BPDA Communications.
Lisa Pollock, I flag for the Department of Neighborhood Development.
Thank you. We've announced this inclusionary development before, right? You've done stories and stuff, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing, how it came about, right? About raising the...
Sure, the policy and the policy reforms. This is fundamentally a conversation about how successful that
Yeah. So I was just looking. So you have a report in front of you, obviously, from upstairs. Just a couple of quick numbers off. Since we issued the executive order, in 2016, we took in $23.7 million of IDP funds. That was 24% of all IDP payments since the policy began in 2000, so it was a big number. Board-approved projects in 2016, commitments of another $42.8 million is the best indicator of the new IDP impact. We also have the CPA revenues coming in, as you know, which came in, I believe, the first quarter of our tax bill. That money's coming in. We've hired an executive director for that. We're waiting for the council to finalize. They did
Last week.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
Great.
Okay, so that's all set?
It's all set?
On my desk?
Yep. Great.
So move forward on that. I think we've made some significant inroads when it comes to affordable housing and housing. We have seen stabilization of rents, even though people don't feel it. But I just think what's happened in Boston, I think and I'm going to stop talking after this, I just think the demand, and I'll turn over to Brian, I think the demand for housing is so great in our city. People are not really leaving, and people are moving in. Millennials are trying to stay here, and baby boomers are moving back. One example is the house next door to me, the family sold, and a couple from Brookline bought the house. No one else. So we're seeing more and more of that happening in our city. So we'll get more into a dialogue later on. I'm going to turn over to Brian, maybe, and then.
Sure. Thanks very much, Mayor, and thanks to those who are visiting with us for the conversation. It's because of the mayor's leadership that we've made significant progress, as documented in this report, in ensuring that we are not only...
It's everybody. It's the commitment of Brian upstairs in development. It's the commitment of Sheila Dillon. It's not just my commitment. It's the commitment of the whole team, what we're seeing in the city of Boston. This isn't about I understand, I appreciate Brian saying that, but it's all of us sitting at the table. I certainly am pushing the envelope to create more housing in the city of Boston, there's no question about that, but we have some great people at this table, and then on this table that are doing some incredible work in the city.
Thanks, Mayor. And so not only are we making significant progress in ensuring that we are not only creating affordable housing, but we're also doing a much better job of tracking our progress so that we know where and how we can improve. The past few years have been a transformative time for development and planning in Boston. Almost a year ago, the former Boston Redevelopment Authority assumed a new identity and refocused mission that better reflects our goal of shaping an inclusive future for all Boston's residents and neighborhoods. A culmination of many years' work, the Boston Planning and Development Agency is now focused on better engaging with Boston's residents, an emphasis on comprehensive planning and smart development, and working closely with our community partners. Our goal every day is to inspire greater trust and confidence among the people we serve. This report in front of you is a result of our agency's effort to track the progress we are making to guide inclusive growth. Tim Davis, our housing policy manager, will formally present the report to you, but simply put, the report shows that we have helped thousands of residents and families find housing through the Inclusionary Development Policy, and how the steps we have taken over the past few years under Mayor Walsh have been particularly impactful. Today, we're in the midst of the biggest building boom in Boston's history, and it is critical that this building boom reaches every one of our residents. IDP is one of the most important tools we have available to us to ensure that low and middle income housing is being created, and that low and middle income families have the opportunity to avoid being priced out of the city due to rising housing costs. We work closely with our partners at the Department of Neighborhood Development to execute the Inclusionary Development Policy, as well as many other programs to ensure that the private development is benefiting all residents. And I thank Christine O'Keefe, who's here with us, from the Department of Neighborhood Development, who oversees the Inclusionary Development Policy Fund, for being here with us today. We'll formally present this report to our Board of Directors of the Boston Planning and Development Agency this coming Thursday, August 10th. Now I'll turn it over to Tim Davis, our Housing Policy Manager, who'll go through the findings of the report, and then we'll be happy to take any questions you might have. So
I'm going to shoot out for this part of it, and it's a quick meeting, and then if you need me, I'll shoot back.
thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Mayor. So the Inclusionary Development Policy was first created by Mayor Menino in 2000. We call it IDP for short. Mayor Walsh revised the policy in December of 2015. The Inclusionary Development Policy creates income-restricted housing with private funding. Developers can meet their IDP commitment through three methods. One is on-site, with a minimum of 13% of the units scattered throughout the project. Off-site, with 15 to 18% of units in a nearby location, and that 15 or 18% depends upon which neighborhood the development is in. Or the IDP fund, which is there's a contribution based on 15 to 18% of the units. Over the life of the policy, of the projects that have been completed since the creation of the policy, 89% have units on-site, 3% have created units off-site, and 26% have agreed to make a contribution to the IDP fund in return for creating fewer or no units on-site. As some projects combine these options, the percentages will add up to more than 100%. In the of the permitted in construction or approved projects, so those are the ones that should be coming forward, 93% have units on-site, 12% are making a contribution, and 8% have off-site units. Over the life of the policy, 1,737 on-site units have been complete, on-site or off-site units have been completed. 229 of those were completed just in 2016. Of the units, 66% are rental units and 34% are condo units.
66 of the 200 number, or 66?
66 of the
volunteer?
total,
Okay.
of the total, yeah. These are where the on-site and off-site units are located. The red are the ones completed prior to 2016, blue are completed during 2016, and the yellow are in construction or permanent. So you can see that they are in almost every neighborhood of the city. They are in every neighborhood of the city. There's less so in certain areas, but obviously they are also most concentrated in areas where there's a lot of development. South Boston, South End, Central Boston neighborhoods, Fenway, etc. And this just is a guide to what area median income means for different households. just for your use. That, for example, we'll talk a lot about the program currently requires that rental units are at 70% of AMI, so those are households making around 50,000 to about 75,000. Condos, half are usually at 80% of AMI, so that's about 58,000 to about 83,000. 100% of AMI, around 72,000 to about 103, 104,000. Just so we talk about area median income, you have some sense of what that means. IDP units are targeted, 52% of condo units are at 80% of AMI. That's 75,000 per family of 3, or when only 4% of 2-bedroom condo sales in Boston were less than our IDP sales price. What that means is that our units are meeting a market that does not, there is no supply for units at this price level for our 80% units. That's an important part of having this program. 48% of the rental units are at 70% of AMI. Only 14% of 2016 2-bedroom rentals in Boston were less than our 2-bedroom rent. So again, meeting a market supply differential. So we had 48% at 70, we had 3% at 60, 55% at 50. So there's different AMI levels that we have our units, and that is partly because the policy over the years has changed. We have had times when we allowed 100, 120% units, 80% units. That has changed over the life of the program.
What's the time range for these figures?
This is over all completions.
Since 2000.
All completions.
Can you repeat the supply-demand dynamic? What is it that's happening?
So what I did was I looked at 2-bedroom condo sales for 2016, and only 4% had a price that was less than what we would charge for an 80% AMI unit. And for our rental units, our 70% rent, which is $14.19 for 2-bedroom, only 14% of 2016 2-bedroom rents were less than that. Now, while we have maximum incomes, the renters' incomes actually range more broadly. 48% of renters have incomes less than 60% of AMI, or less than $50,000. Many of these can only do through the assistance of other supports, such as Section 8 or housing choice vouchers. But we have 15% that are making less than 30% of AMI, which are in the affordable housing lingo. Many of the units that we restrict at that level are usually prioritized for families that have been homeless. So it's meeting a need of very low-income households, these 31 to 60, and these are all units that are provided by private money. Through both the existence of the Inclusionary Development Policy and efforts of city agencies, income restrictions units are getting built in central Boston neighborhoods. What I mean by central Boston neighborhoods are Fenway, South End, downtown, Back Bay, Beacon Hill, those neighborhoods. Before the IDP was created, 35% of production of units was in downtown neighborhoods, but only 21% of affordable housing units were created in those neighborhoods. During the first part of the IDP, there was still some imbalance between what was created inside and outside the downtown area. But over the last 3 years, 43% of the affordable housing units and 43% of the total units have all been in these downtown neighborhoods.
Do you include the Seaport as a central Boston neighborhood?
I did not for this part, no. So in other words, affordable production has been keeping with total production. Contributions to the IDP fund has supported the completion of an additional 1,070 income-restricted units located across the city. About a little less than $97 million was received through 2016, and $24 million was received just in 2016. This map, which I hate to say is not in the report, we discovered just a little while ago. We have a few last-minute edits before this goes online. But this map will be in the report that will go online before tomorrow. And this shows where the funds come from. Those are the, and then where they're going to. Most of these units are more deeply affordable than IDP units because what Sheila and Christine do in their shop is that they combined IDP funds with other affordable housing funds, and looking at overall affordable housing projects. So you see that 73% of the units are targeted for households of 50,000 or less, including 18% that are making less than about 25,000. And just to highlight a few projects, we have Patriot Homes in South Boston. This was completed in 2016. It transformed the former D6 police station at the corner of D and Athens Street, an adjacent parcel, into 24 apartments for veterans and their families. It was developed by the South Boston Neighborhood Development Corporation and received over $2 million of funding from the IDP Fund, as well as $750,000 from the Neighborhood Housing Trust, which are, as some of you may know, the linkage money that comes from commercial development. This project contains 6 units for very low-income veterans who have experienced homelessness and 17 units for low-income veterans. Then we have another project that was finally completed. It's the Oxford Ping-On in Chinatown. It was completed in 2016 by the Chinese Economic Development Corporation. What was now a parking lot is now a 67-unit building with affordable units serving 7 very low-income households and 59 low-income households. It received IDP funds from the 120 Kingston Street project adjacent to it, which is also known as the Radian. This is very important that we're doing development in Chinatown that helps to keep people in the neighborhood. Another one is the residence at Brighton Marine. In 2016, this is an approved project. In 2016, the BPDA approved the residences of Brighton Marine. It honors the history and use of the vacant and underutilized Brighton Marine Health Center. It restores some of these historical structures and provides new construction as well for a mixed income housing community for veterans. 80 of the 102 units will be income restricted, with units set aside in 3 income categories ranging from very low to mid income. Again, this is another project that helps veterans. While the federal government has been slowly abandoning the funding of affordable housing, the City of Boston has turned to new sources of funding, including the IDP Fund, to sustain and expand production. Before IDP, so I'm looking at data from 1994 to 1999, 78% of the funds that the city gave directly to affordable housing projects, these are ones that were completed during those years, 78% of the funding was from federal sources, either federal home or federal CDBG. Over the last 5 years, it has only been 22% of the funding. The federal funding has basically remained flat, which with inflation means it has gone down, while the city has really stepped up with operating money, neighborhood housing trust money, which now represents 25% of the budget and 30% from IDP funds. Some recent BPDA initiatives. Policy-related in both the JP Rocks plan area and in the planned South Boston Dorchester Ave area, we've introduced density bonuses, whereby we, in exchange for additional density, a developer is required to do additional affordability. The outcomes of those density bonus discussions in the neighborhoods really drove how we got to a final policy for each of those, which we're currently looking at the implementation strategies. Also within our housing compliance department, which Peter Sasso is runs our compliance department, he's here with us. We've added new staff, starting with really in 15 myself, but also staff in compliance that work on the day-to-day efforts around making sure that the units have people in them who meet income and asset eligibility. The new web page design, this is not just that the BPDA has done some overall overhauling of their website, but we've also done some overhauling of ours so that it makes more sense, it's more clear, it's more user-friendly. In fact, we have different buckets for different kinds of users, whether developers or potential renters or buyers. A dedicated phone number so that our staff at the desk, at the receptionist, they don't have to know everything. They can pass along something they know if someone has a question. Also, stronger cross-agency relationships with Fair Housing, the Disability Commission, and Neighborhood Development to make sure that things are running much smoothly and faster as we move through these developments. in 2017 and 18, some of the kind of things that we're working on now, implementing the density bonuses for those two neighborhoods, but also maybe looking at them for other neighborhoods as part of our planning process. As you may or may not know, the Inclusionary Development Policy is a policy. It is an executive order. We do not have inclusionary zoning. So we only get these IDP units or funds if there is a zoning variance. So as zoning is changing in the city to reflect better the needs of the city, we want to make sure we still get IDP funds and units. So we are seeking passage of an inclusionary zoning law, which is a home rule petition. Operations and customer experience, we're adding administrative hearings for questions around eligibility, but also if someone, for example, is not an owner occupant and there's some question about it. Online lottery applications, so that it's a lot easier for individuals to enter the lottery, but also working to create a citywide one-stop application. There will be a partnership between Fair Housing, Department of Neighborhood Development, and ourselves. So increasing the ways that we are more open and transparent for people to get into the process. That's it, if there's any questions.